was rushed to the hospital where she died. Number 2 is a racing crash. Some televised sporting events can be dangerous, despite being broadcast for all the world to witness. However, it's arguable that there are few as life-threatening as Formula One racing. The competitors are strapped into a machine that can hit 62 miles per hour in less than 2 seconds and hit top speeds of over 200 miles per hour and pulls in more G's than anything NASA has ever launched into space. It can be a deadly premise. Ayrton Senna da Silva was no stranger to these risks. The beloved Italian driver raced for the last time on May 1st, 1994 during the San Marino Grand Prix. During the 7th lap of the race, the 34-year-old was in the lead and was approaching a turn when his car ran head-on into a cement wall at 135 miles an hour. His car drifted off to the side of the track with the front right half completely demolished as the live TV camera operator zoomed in on Senna, seated motionless in the cockpit. He suffered 3 head traumas in the crash, any of which would have killed them on their own. He was pronounced dead at Madrid Hospital later that day. Number 3 is the Olympic Massacre. On September 5th, 1972, the 20th Olympic Summer Games were being held in Munich, West Germany, when they suddenly became the stage for a terrorist attack. Orchestrated by the Palestinian group known as Black September, the motivation for the attack was to have 236 prisoners released from jails in Israel and Germany. Between the hours of 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., 8 terrorists broke into the Olympic Village and entered the sleeping quarters of Israeli athletes. Once Black September started taking hostages, some of the athletes actually fought back while others did their best to escape. In the chaos, 2 athletes were shot and killed, and 9 were taken hostage. A frustrated and troubled man who could not afford his medical insurance and was furious with the health maintenance organization. Getting back in his truck, he set it ablaze, but after a few seconds emerged, unable to stand the pain and tearing his smoking clothing off. He then stood on the edge of the freeway but couldn't bring himself to jump. That's when finally he grabbed the shotgun from his burning truck and shot himself through the chin while viewers at home watched in sheer terror. And number 10 is the news team that was murdered. On August 23, 2015, Allison Parker, a news reporter for WDBJ-TV, was conducting a live interview with Executive Director Vicki Gardner from the local Chamber of Commerce. The two were standing outside Bridgewater Plaza near Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia, discussing upcoming plans and events for the 50th anniversary of the town's reservoir. However, what should have been a rather mundane broadcast turned into a horrifying ordeal when, in the middle of the interview, Gardner, Parker, and the cameraman for the segment, Adam Ward, were all shot multiple times at close range. Soon after the shocking event, the feed cut back to a shocked anchor who threw to commercial. The shooter was former WDBJ reporter Vester Lee Flanagan II, who was fired from the station due to disruptive conduct in 2013. Both Allison Parker and Adam Ward were killed at the scene, but Gardner survived her gunshot wound. Flanagan shot himself during a car chase with police several hours later and died in hospital. So, those were the 10 most shocking deaths caught live on television. As always, I want to know from you in the comments, were there any other live deaths that were broadcasted that were so disturbing that they deserve to be on this list? I also want to give a big thanks to Audible for sponsoring this video. They have an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original shows, and more for nearly all devices like iPhones, Androids, iPads, tablets, and more. Audiobooks are the perfect way to pass the time, especially if you're doing something time-consuming like traveling or doing chores around the house. And Audible is offering a free audiobook with a 30-day free trial to give you a chance to try out the service if you use the link in the description, audible.com/Matthew. Lately, I've been in a creepy mood and I've been listening to Stephen King's It, one of the many horror audiobooks that they have. You can get that book or any other audiobook free along with a 30-day free trial at audible.com/Matthew. But as always, I really appreciate you guys coming by today. Remember to come back tomorrow and every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time because I'll have a brand new video for you. I'll see you then. Pictures are often taken to capture a happy moment in time, a moment we often want to look back on because it simply made us smile. But sometimes those photos are the last thing someone will ever do. The following images that I'm about to show you were taken of or by people who would immediately after, unbeknownst to them, come face to face with their own death. They had no way of knowing what was to come next, and were forever immortalized in these tragic photos. So prepare yourself, because here are 10 photos taken right before tragedy. Number 1 is a car bombing. On August 15th, 1998, a group of Spanish tourists were visiting Omagh, Northern Ireland. This was during a 3-decade-long dispute between Unionists and Loyalists and Protestants and Catholics, and was a very dangerous time to be in the country. Two of the tourists, a father and son, decided to take a photo to commemorate their trip. Just moments after this photo was taken, the stolen red Vauxhall Cavalier to the right, shown here, exploded. The car bombing killed 29 people and injured another 220 more. However, in an unbelievable twist, the father and son pictured here beside the car actually survived the blast. However, it was actually the cameraman who was not so fortunate and died shortly after. The camera that took this image was found by the authorities in the rubble. Number 2 is the flood. On June 8th, 2014, a group of second-year engineering students from India were on a tour going from Shimla to Manali. Stopping by the riverbanks, they were unaware that a nearby hydroelectric plant had opened their floodgates, releasing a large surge of water into the river. They stopped to take a happy selfie when, almost immediately after, 25 students, including those seen here, were killed when the water levels raised drastically. The event became known as the Beas River Tragedy. Number 3 is the death of John Lennon. Taken on December 8th, 1980, this iconic photo was one of the last ever taken of the great John Lennon. This photo shows John Lennon signing an autograph for one of his biggest fans, Mark David Chapman. But little did he know that shortly after, Chapman would actually murder him. Chapman was a huge Beatles fan, but became fanatic and ended up shooting Lennon 4 times in the back, killing him. Perhaps what's truly disturbing about the situation is that Chapman waited for police to arrive after the murder because he wanted to be caught. He did it because he wanted to forever be known as the man who murdered John Lennon. Number 4 is a man jumping to his death. In February of 2013, a newspaper photographer was fiddling with their camera settings so that they could get a picture of the fog around a bridge in Hubei, China. However, what he actually caught was truly horrifying. While the photographer was trying to snap a picture of the bridge, a man jumped off of it, plummeting to his death. Immediately afterwards, a woman suspected of being the man's lover prepared to do the same. Paralyzed by shock and with the camera still in the photographer's hand, he did not know what to do. And as the woman jumped, the photographer tensed, accidentally taking the photo that you see here as the woman fell to her death. Number 5 is a live television suicide. R. Bud Dwyer was a Pennsylvania senator who served as the treasurer for Pennsylvania. However, his name ended up being dragged through the mud after being accused and convicted of corruption for accepting a bribe, for which he was forced to resign from his position. Maintaining his innocence and unable to cope any longer with the embarrassment with his family, he held a live press conference in which he was supposed to simply resign. However, that did not happen. The conference suddenly took a much darker turn, and instead of resigning, Dwyer pulled out a handgun in the middle of his speech live on air, put it in his mouth, and shot himself in the head. This to the horror of a room full of reporters and colleagues that had to watch. Disturbingly, the entire thing was broadcast live on television, and that clip itself is available in its entirety, uncensored, on YouTube right now. However, I warn you, the clip is not for those with a weak stomach. Number 6 is a serial killer murder. In 1990, 14-year-old Regina K. Walters from Texas and her boyfriend ran away from home and shortly after disappeared. The photo shown here is the last image ever taken of Regina, which was taken by her murderer, serial killer and rapist Robert Van Rhodes. One of over 50 of Rhodes' victims, police believe that while her boyfriend was likely killed right away, Walters was kept alive longer, as Rhodes liked to take pictures of his victims before torturing them. One of those such pictures being this one, where Walters' hair was cut and she was forced to wear a black dress. This photo was taken just moments before Rhodes brutally murdered Walters in an abandoned barn. Rhodes was finally apprehended and convicted in 1994, but the haunting photos of his victims live on in infamy. Number 7 is falling into Niagara Falls. On October 1st, 1995,